Welcome back to the Well of Ascension deep dive. Hopefully this mic works good. Hold on, I gotta tighten this up. Okay. Lots of thoughts about. So I am in chapters 5 to 11 of the first part of the Well of Ascension. I just got to the end of part 1. Part 2 is ghosts in the mist. I have to admit, great. So many questions in the first part that I want to talk about, and so many interesting things. I was thinking every single part Brandon Sanderson ends very well, like kind of like a cliffhanger kind of thing. And I was reading chapter 10, and chapter 10 was directly, it was like a boring chapter, but not boring at all. It was a chapter when Ellen has the meeting with all his like assembly. You know, it's like politics. You know, as much as politics is, you know, can be entertaining, I'm pretty bored by it. But the end of this chapter, our guy Clubs comes in, and there's a second army outside the city. So I was going and thinking, oh my goodness, what a great way. This should have been the way that he ends. How is he going to top this in the next chapter? And the next chapter was kind of slowly winding down, and I was like, is this chapter going to just be like a boring ending? This doesn't make any sense. Like, how would he end a part when they're like walking away? Breeze had just kind of come back. I was like, that's kind of a cool thing to come back, but that would have been a great beginning to the next part. Why did he just end with this part? And then all of a sudden, the last like page or the last 2 pages of this, they find another Kandra, where they don't find the Kandra, but they find another person's bones that the Kandra had left, so that there's now someone infiltrating the group. This is the last paragraph. Vin looked down at the pile of bones, feeling a sickening sense of unease. There was a very good chance someone in their core team, a member of Kelsier's former band, was now an imposter. Woo! Man, that is intense stuff. I have guesses who, I could think it is, and I'll talk about that at the end. But wow, that is a very good ending to a part. But let's start back at where I left off last video, which is chapter 5. There's a lot that was going on in all of these chapters. I'm not going to talk about every little last thing that I wrote, but sometimes I say that and I really just do talk about every little last thing. I feel like this video could be like a few hours. So I'll try to be a little quicker, and I'll try to kind of just like wrap up my thoughts a little bit more clearly, quickly, synthetically. Chapter 5. This is my summary of this chapter. Vin and Ellen kind of have a chat, and Vin is like a goddess when she's walking around in the city. She is kind of like the replacement for Kelsier. Really fascinating depiction. It made me think of a few other different stories that I've read, and I want to talk about that. All these inscriptions in the beginning of the chapter, like what are they called? Postscripts, or like the little preludes, are so fascinating. I don't really know what they're talking about. There's one name that was mentioned, I think, in the previous sections too, that I want to talk about. I don't really understand who it is. This one, it says, am I the one who betrayed him? For I know now that he must never be allowed to complete his quest. Who is this? Are they still talking about the Hero of Ages? It's interesting too, because in the first Mistborn book, just called Mistborn, I was thinking they were talking about the Well of Ascension, and the Well of Ascension being like the Lord Ruler's rise to power. I thought that this book was going to be, to some extent, I was hoping that it wasn't, which I'm glad that it's not, but I was hoping to some extent it was going to be like I was not hoping, I was thinking to some extent that it was going to be like a flashback on the Lord Ruler's ascent. And I thought the next one, which is the Hero of Ages, was going to be another part of that. It was going to be, one was going to be the Lord Ruler's ascent, one was going to be how he maybe like killed the Hero of Ages, or like where the Hero of Ages came from. But this really has nothing to do with that yet. I'm curious if we're gonna get into any like flashbacks on that. Oh, dang it! I just lost my place. I'm curious if we're gonna get any flashbacks on that. I just think I'm glad that we don't, because I want to stay with Vin. Like, Vin is interesting, although she's getting a little irritable here. I don't like really how she deals with people sometimes. But I want to stay with Vin, and it's a really entertaining start to the story so far. Ooh, other great notes. They found what the 14th metal does, or she found. That's such a cool thing. I'm so pumped to talk about that. The first thing I underlined right here. And so, despite predictions that Luthadel would soon fall, despite whispers that its army was small and weak, the people had stayed, worked, lived, just as they always had. The life of a Ska had never been very certain. I love this little section, because everyone else is kind of fleeing the city, and even though the city is under siege, the Ska are sitting there going, we've definitely had it worse than this. This is like the only place where our hope is. In fact, there's Ska pouring into the city because they kind of see this as like the beacon of the rebellion, like the little city of the rebellion. And I think that's fantastic. I love that. The Ska are just really interesting. It seems like they're getting more and more to their cause. I feel like if they had, actually, it's been a year, so I don't know if I can say that either. The juxtapositions of Sazid, and I will say Sazid till the day that I die. I know in every single video people correct me and they're like, it's Sazid, I believe. I might be pronouncing the correct pronunciation wrong, but I will say Sazid till the day that I die. I like Sazid, the way Sazid sounds more. But the little back and forth between what he's encountering with the Ska versus what Luthadel has in its Ska city is really interesting. The people in Luthadel who are Ska are a bit more bold. There's people on the assembly who are Ska. I don't want to say like they're smarter, but they're a little less superstitious than the ones that are still out in the country. Like Sazid goes south. I cannot wait to talk about what he's up to over there. And the people over there just still are superstitious and still don't really want to learn, and almost are like angry of their newfound freedom. They almost want subservience, which is wild. Yeah. It's really strange. It's an interesting dynamic to a story. I think I was thinking this entire section. You know, Brandon Sanderson, a great story builder or world builder. He's a good story writer. I think this was the first section where I was more legitimately impressed with his writing. All of Mistborn was good writing. It was like but like, again, he even calls his writing like window pane writing. Like you just want to see through it to get to the story. This was the first bit of writing where I was actually kind of impressed from like a literary perspective. And actually, yes, from a literary perspective, I feel like his words are getting better, but also just from like the realistic kind of things. Like, in the first book, there were certain things that kind of just annoyed me, like little tropes that he just played on. And I think that was just because it was one of his first books. He kind of has ditched that to some extent. There was only one thing that I noticed when I think it was he just liked a word that he used all the time, which is padded. As soon as Orasur, his Kandra form took the form of a dog, like he consumed the dog, or the, what was it called? The wolf? The dire wolf? No, that's Game of Thrones. I forgot what exactly the name was, but he consumed that thing, and he kept using the word padded around. And it's a great verb, phenomenal verb, but I think he overused it. I think he used it like 10 times. It was, honestly, because I have a dog, I find it's really, really cute. So I kind of love that he's the form of a dog. Although there's a lot of ethical things. I want to kind of discuss that, whether Orasur should be that or not. He kind of seemed like he was enjoying it, actually, at the end. But there's some ethical questions there. And Vin's relationship with Orasur is very confusing and very interesting, and I kind of want to talk about that as well. But his writing has gotten better in the sense of like, I feel like this book is exactly what would happen had Mistborn actually taken place. Like, it just seems like a natural flowing thing. Other authors, I think, would make it so like Mistborn ends and like, oh, it's like everything's good in the city now. But that's not the case, because Ska have been so downtrodden and so demoralized that they cannot really band together and overcome their superstitions and overcome like the way that they almost are programmed at this moment to think because of the nobility. And so I just think it's really interesting that some of the Ska are able to kind of supersede that, and they're able to go on the assembly and kind of like, give their takes for politics and, what the city should do. But still, they're not like the most outspoken people in the entire thing. And they still have their superstitions, and the entire realm is kind of in chaos right now. The whole entire area is just in utter chaos. There's armies at this front door. Another army pops up. These armies are going to fight together. Like Breeze all of a sudden pops back in the story. Like the whole politics of it. Again, I'm not like, super into politics, but it just seems very realistic. It seems like this is like exactly what would happen. And I really appreciate Brandon Sanderson's writing style for that. I think he's actually becoming a much stronger writer in this book. I would say Mistborn, I don't know, actually. I can't really compare favorites because I'm only one part into that, and only one part into this book right now. But I will say his writing has gotten much better. I'm very excited to keep reading. My brother was really excited because he just published the 5th one of the I keep blanking on all these titles. Someone told me in the last video what that was called. I'm not even gonna try. Vin is, so in this first chapter, or in this 5th chapter right here, Vin is having an identity crisis. It says, she pretended to be the urchin who had grown up starving in the streets, a girl who had been beaten far more often than she had been befriended. And it says she's like pretended to be the girl of Valette Renault. She's going back between nobility, between being a Ska, between being Ellen's girlfriend. She doesn't really know who she is. Valette is useless to Ellen. He needs a mistress, not an uncomfortable girl in a gown that she doesn't quite fill. Her wounds from the night before were now a reminder of her place. She's having an identity crisis, and this just keeps having me think there's going to be someone that comes into the story, potentially like the Watcher, who she actually just meets. I have to say, too, I was actually kind of astonished how quickly we got answers in this part. I thought we weren't going to know who the Watcher was till like halfway through. I thought the 14th metal was going to be something that we discovered at the end. We actually already discovered what the 14th metal was. I'm pumped that we're already kind of getting answers, and we're not even at what people call the Sanderlanche. So that's exciting to me. But I think that Vin is going through some kind of deep identity crisis in this book, and I think this is going to kind of be what haunts her. She's almost like at a position of indecision right now. She doesn't know what she is. And so she's going through life not really having any kind of real identity or like purpose. She's like a glorified bodyguard. But that's not really what a Mistborn should be, I think. That seems like what the Mistborn are to the nobility. Like, at least Mistings are that to the nobility. They're like bodyguards. Except Sean. Sean Alariel was like independent. She was a nobility. I don't know. Like, it seems like she's like having a hard time right now. And I think you can kind of capture that. And again, this is part of why I think Brandon Sanderson is becoming a better writer. Yes, he explains that in this section that she's kind of having an identity crisis. Like, she doesn't really know who she is. But then you can kind of sense that with other things. She's not short with Ellen, but she's a little bit more testy with Ellen. Like, she's like a little bit more unpredictable almost in how she communicates with them. That's one thing that I think you noticed. The second thing that I think I was noticing as well was just her discussions with Orsuer, and how she's like short with him and like does not like him and does not communicate in a very kind and clear way. Yes, she's a Ska. She's, had hell coming to her. But in the whole Mistborn book, she was just like a little bit more humble than she is now. It's like almost like she's gotten a little power, but she doesn't really know how to flirt between these two things or really interact with people, to be honest. Like, she does to some extent, but she's not like, the most social, and she wasn't really the most sociable person in Mistborn, but maybe it was just a different extent and a different degree. So I think she's going to have an identity crisis. I'm actually nervous that she's going to go off the rails a little bit and like not join the dark side, but like, is someone going to try to lure her like a Kylo Ren kind of thing. And is she going to join the dark side temporarily, thinking that this is actually the right path to take because they actually give her some kind of identity? I think if she doesn't have an identity for a long time, she's going to flounder and flail and not really be able to know what she's up to. Which is why I actually think it's really good that Sazid is coming back. I think Sazid is going to give her some kind of grounding. There's another terrorist woman that pops in the story too. All these things are going to pop into my head. So that is just making me very excited to see what's going to play out and what's going to happen here. So another section that kind of shocked me says, this is what she's being followed in the streets, and this is what it says. "We know," one of the men said, "you're his heir. He passed on, and this time you survived." "Please," a woman said, stepping forward, holding a young child in her arms. "Lady heir, if the hand that struck down the Lord Ruler could touch my child." Vin tried to back away further, but she realized she was against another crowd of people. The woman stepped closer, and Vin finally raised an uncertain hand to touch the baby's forehead. I was shocked that she actually touched the baby's forehead, but I think this is good for her to do this. Now, this is weird. I think it's like the Messiah kind of complex. Like these people, like Vin is just a normal person. We know who Vin is. To these people, she is like a goddess. She's like someone who is like overthrown the Lord Ruler, and the Lord Ruler was God, so she must be a god. Kelsier was the god to them, and like the survivor. Now she is like the new heir to this. And I actually think she's fulfilling her role somewhat good. There's a section in one of my favorite books of all time called "Till We Have Faces" by C.S. Lewis, and it's a retelling of the Cupid and Psyche myth in like a more like barbaric kind of way. It's a really good story. And there's one section in that I remember where there's a ugly daughter and there's a really beautiful daughter. And then the king has another daughter, the third daughter, who is like beyond anything. She is like the most beautiful creature that anybody has ever seen. And she walks through the street one time, and all these people think that she is blessed with like the gift of healing and the ability to touch because she is so beautiful. And so she goes through the city like touching people, and like she continually walks through the city and like doesn't really think that she has the ability to heal people, but does this for the people's benefit. And it's a really interesting ethical question whether that's good or not. It seems like almost like deception, but it's a really interesting question. And I'm actually happy that Vin did this. I think it's good for her. And this sounds terrible to some extent, but I think it's good for her to just appease the crowd to some extent. I think this might be sad, but to some extent, I think she has to feed into this like Messiah kind of complex. She's not manipulative, and she's not going to use this to her own advantage, I think. Like, this isn't like a Paul Atreides kind of situation where like she's going to become this Messiah and like, whatever she says is going to be good, and like, she's going to just do what she wants to do. I don't think she has the capacity to do that. She doesn't seem like that to me. But I don't know. Something about that was endearing to me. Maybe it was because she was so testy in her like behavior before that this is like the first time I think maybe you've gotten her like acquiescence for someone like doing something that she really didn't want to do, but she kind of just like acquiesced and was like, okay, like I'll touch your baby. It's not going to work, but we'll try. Then she gets the runt of the litter, or no, the guy comes, a wolfhound. The guy comes, gives her the runt of the litter. It's too cute, so she goes to the back. Vin scanned the wolfhound. Near the back, she spotted a massive black and gray beast. It was chained to a post and regarded her defiantly, a low growl rising in its throat. Vin pointed, "How much for that one in the back?" She goes over and knocks it out and brings it to Orasur to pretty much consume. Kind of terrifying. I said it's kind of sad, but actually kind of cool at the same time. Like, I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was kind of cool that Orasur is consuming a dog, and I like that she kind of has a dog companion rather than like, killing another person. But it's also sad that that this dog is dead. And I guess they were like, trying to say that it was like, the most ferocious dog, and it probably, wouldn't have been great. So I guess it's better with Orasur. But it's interesting because Orasur is now able to keep up with Vin in pretty much everything that they do. I think it's kind of cool. Kind of works. Also, we get this note from Terrian, who is this, what did it say? Allomantic metallurgist. Lady Vin, here is the next alloy you requested. I think it was the 6th one out of 40 they tried. They didn't try 40 though. It was the sixth one they tried. Aluminum is very difficult to acquire, but when a noble family recently left the city, I was able to buy some of their dining ware. That's funny. I do not know if this one will work, but I believe it's worth a try. I have mixed the aluminum with 4% copper and found the outcome quite promising. I have read of this composition. It's called duralumin. My note, new allomantic power. What is this? ... I'm expecting like us to not know what this is. Like this is like the 11th metal. Like we're not going to be able to figure what this is until like halfway through the book, even the end of the book. And then all of a sudden, like 2 more chapters, we're actually able to figure out what this is. That this just like illuminates your power. So here's my understanding of it. I think it's a pretty clear understanding. I don't think there's any like confusion that I have of this. You burn this and flash this, and it completely uses up all your supply of whatever metal that you have. And that supply, it's used in one big burst. So like if you are pewter burning and you burn duralumin during that pewter burning, you just become, all that pewter burns in one instant and you become incredibly strong. Like all that pewter is just like potent. And you can, yeah, you're crazy strong for that moment. I'm very, very curious how it's going to work with smoking. And it does work. We know how it works with her hearing. Yeah, so we kind of know how that works with it. Like she was able to hear like everything, like too much. It actually kind of makes me think to some extent. No, other mistings probably couldn't burn this. They can only burn one. But I'm actually curious if this is maybe like a outlier of a metal, and that other mistings can actually burn this to enhance their own abilities. I don't think so, but that's in the back of my head. Here we go. I'm sorry, Mistress, Orsur said in his toneless way, but you did not command me to tell you if your package arrived. Vin ground her teeth. He knew how anxiously she'd been waiting for the other ally from Terrian. All the previous aluminum alloys had they tried, had turned out to be duds. Sorry, it bothered her to know that there was another elementic metal out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. She wouldn't be satisfied until she found it. Ursula sat where he was, bland expression on his face, unconscious wolfhound on the floor in front of him. Just get to work on that hound, Vince said, spinning and leaving the room to search for Elend. I don't like how she talks to Orsur. Orsur, it kept on mentioning the contract. This is either a red herring that Brandon Sanderson is trying to give us, because I think they over talked about the contract in this section. About like, Kendra will never break its contract. The contract is like, the way of life. They would rather die than break the contract. But this feels like a Dobby situation. If you've read Harry Potter, Dobby, who's like, a house elf, who house elves never break what they're supposed to do. There's only we only really know 2 house elves who really ever broke what their master wanted them to do, which is Dobby and Creature. And Creature didn't even really do it. He kind of just stretched what his master wanted him to do. And I feel like this might somewhat be the same. Because, so in Harry Potter, because Sirius Black treated Creature with scorn and hatred, so Creature kind of turned his back on Sirius, and it ended up being Sirius's death. So I have a bad feeling that because Vin keeps mistreating Orsur, she's going to get betrayed by him. And it actually mentions that in another section. I think actually in this chapter, hold on. It talked about, I think Vin talked about how, Ellen shrugged. He'll hold to his contracts. He'll hold to his contract. That's what's important. He holds to the contract, Vin said, but only begrudgingly. I swear he enjoys frustrating me. And then it mentioned this again. I don't know if I highlighted this in my notes. Yeah, I didn't highlight this in my notes, but I think it mentions another time that, she thinks, because it's a contract, then it's easier for her to be betrayed by this. And, she's going to be more disappointed when it actually does happen, which I feel like is probably... I just have a bad feeling. I just wish they treated Orsur kinder. I don't really know what a Kandra is, so I don't have like, the prejudice against the Kandra. It does seem very strange, but I don't know really what they look like. In my mind, they're just strange creatures. Like when the whole body is disfigured of Orsur and he consumes this dog, this wolfhound, I don't know what he really looked like before. It's like hard to visualize in my head. I don't really want to look that up. Maybe I'll ask for that on Discord. If you can send me some images of what Orsur looks like, if there's anything out there. I'd be very curious to see that actually. Maybe I'll ask the Discord that right after this, because I'm curious. They've never been able to figure out the proper elementic alloy of aluminum. Elementic metals always came in pairs: iron and steel, tin and pewter, copper and bronze, zinc and brass. So aluminum and something powerful. Hopefully, her adium was gone. She needed an edge, and this. I'm gonna forget the name all the time. This duralumin. I gotta find a mnemonic device to remember that. This duralumin seems like it's gonna give her the edge. I don't know if, and I'm curious if other people know what this is. I'm very curious if the Watcher knows what this is. Because we've only really got like the allomantic powers according to Luthadel, like Kelsier. There has to be a huge, vast knowledge of this elsewhere. Kelsier didn't really know that much. He kind of became like an allomancer pretty recently, and then came back and kind of like stormed the city. So what else do the nobility know about allomancy that me as a reader don't know yet, and Vin doesn't know? Like, Vin is learning quickly, but I'm so curious if there's like 20 other elementic metals out there that we just don't know about that are being used. Like, what do these other Mistborn know that we don't? Great chapter though. Chapter 6, Ham and Vin kind of battle for it. They have a back and forth fight. Spook is back, which I was so glad. And Orsur is a dog. That's my summary of this chapter. They just kind of have a battle back and forth. I think this is like an interesting chapter. Ooh, okay. This was a section. I gotta turn the page so I can read this. Come on. Okay. The Lord Ruler didn't tell me you've gone back to the dialect. Sorry. Ellen's head immediately began to hurt. Lord Ruler, don't tell me you've gone back to the dialect, because Spook just comes back. Oh, just for the occasional nostalgic quip, Spook said with a laugh. His words bore traces of his Easterner accent during the first few months. Ellen had known the boy. Spook had been utterly intelligible. Fortunately, he had grown out of it using his street cant, as he'd managed to grow out of most of his clothing. Well over 6 feet tall, the 16-year-old young man hardly resembled the gangly boy Ellen met a year before. I think, or my theory is, people probably made a lot of comments in Mistborn about how they didn't really like how he spoke and they didn't really understand it. And then Brandon Sanderson just needed a way for him to like learn and speak normally. So he's still going to incorporate this every once in a while. But I'm like, this seems very similar to like no one knew how to pronounce Hermione's name before in like the first 4 books. And so Rowling just like wrote out a character pronouncing her name. I'm like, that this is what that seems like. He didn't want to keep having to write Spook's language, which he still does in this, but he just kind of had Spook learn, which is great. I think it's great. I love that Spook is back in the story. Spook is one of my favorites. I kind of really love Spook. I also think it's interesting because I kind of have a weird, I talked about this in the previous video. I feel like Ellen might die. I feel like that, not that like everything's kind of leading toward that in any way, but I'm a little nervous of that. And I just keep thinking Vin and Spook together. Spook did ask her out before. I'm curious if this is going to come back. It was a really cute section of the prior book too. It was one of my favorites. I thought that was really cute. In this chapter 2, we get... Ooh, okay. This is an interesting section. I might actually write a full essay on this. This is one of the big sections in this that I'm like, I actually kind of want to talk about this. It says this: Ellen chuckled, leading Vin away. Truth be told, even with the slightest sour end of conversation, he felt better for having come to watch the sparring. It was strange how the members of Kelsier's crew could laugh and make light even during the most terrible of situations. They had a way of making him forget about his problems. Perhaps that was a holdover from the survivor. Kelsier had reportedly insisted on laughing, no matter how bad the situation. It had been a form of rebellion to him. That's a good bit of writing from Sanderson, because there's other stories. Now, on the channel, most of you probably know already that I'm reading Lord of the Rings, and there's one section where I just got to this, actually, in the Voice of Saruman chapter, where Saruman is like, for lack of better words, using the elementic power that Breeze has, where he's persuading people, and he's like using this magical power, and it's kind of working on this whole entire group that's standing there with him. And then all of a sudden, Gandalf laughs, and it seems to break the spell for everyone. It's this almost the same thing as like the ridiculous charm with the Boggart. Like this fear kind of floods you, and it's persuading you to not do something that you should do, or do something that you shouldn't do. And then all of a sudden, the power to beat that is through laughter. It's a really cool thing that I think these writers are trying to get at. That sometimes even if you don't feel it or believe it, I think it's good to just kind of laugh. Because just the act of laughing brings levity to a situation and makes you feel better. What's up, buddy? My dog's just hanging out, looking to go on a walk. He's looking at me like I'm crazy right now. What's up, bud? You're kind of like a wolfhound. You're like a small wolfhound, buddy. Or sewer over there. I should call him Sewer. That'd be a great name for a dog. Someone get a dog and name your dog Sewer, please. Okay, but that was all chapter 6. Chapter 7, Sazid and Marsh, question mark. They chat. It kept mentioning in this very short chapter the difference that Sazid noticed in Marsh. I am 90% sure that this is Marsh. 10% of me is like, is this really Marsh? Did they kill Marsh and just like learn everything that Marsh knows, and are they just impersonating Marsh in some way? Because how do you tell one Steel Inquisitor from another, really? Come on. They all kind of probably look the same. This chapter, I'm going to talk about this chapter for a while, because I think this chapter is really interesting. Hopefully this video doesn't go over an hour. We'll see. I'm trying to keep them under an hour. I don't know if I have high hopes of that. His students continued to scribble. He had spent quite a bit of effort explaining to the elders why writing was so important. At last they had chosen him some students. Partially, Sazid was sure, to appease him. He shook his head slowly as he watched them write. There was no passion in their learning. They came because they were ordered, and because Master Terraceman willed it, not because of any real desire for education. During the days before the collapse, Sazid had often imagined what the world would look like once the Lord Ruler was gone. He had pictured keepers emerging, bringing forgotten knowledge and truths to an excited, thankful populace. He'd imagined teaching before a warm hearth at night, telling stories to an eager audience. He'd never stopped to consider a village stripped of its working men, whose people were too exhausted at night to bother with tales from the past. He'd never imagined a people who seemed more annoyed by his presence than thankful. I thought this was great. This is where his writing, I think, is shining forth. It's in this idea that the expectations aren't meeting the reality. Like everyone thought, as soon as the Lord Ruler was slain, that it was going to bring peace and goodness to the whole world, and it's not. And it's terrifying. And Sazid is walking in thinking, oh, I can't wait. Everyone's going to be so excited to learn, and I'm going to be so important in this realm. And he's not. He's actually looked at, not with excitement and anticipation. I think that's a good bit of writing that Sanderson is doing. And I feel for Sazid, but also, what the heck is going on? Because this is another section. And yet a part of Sazid resisted. That made him feel deeply guilty. The villagers needed his teachings, and he wished deeply to help them, but he felt that he was missing something. The Lord Ruler was dead, but the story did not seem finished. Was there something he had overlooked? Something even larger than the Lord Ruler? Something so large, so big, that it was effectively invisible? Is this the Well of Ascension? Is this the mist? There's something with the mist. I don't know what it is with the mist, but there's something there with the mist. Missing it. I just don't know what it is. And I thought this was so interesting. And it mentioned this again. Because someone comes up to him. Master Terraceman, the woman said out of breath. He's come back. He's come for us. Who, Sazid asked. The man who died in the mist? No, Master Terraceman. The Lord Ruler. I stopped after that paragraph. I was like, what the heck is going on? Terrified. But then, like, literally the next paragraph, he walks out and he's like, oh, it's just Marsh. And I was very happy Marsh is back. Marsh is one of my favorite characters. I loved him from the minute we met him in Mistborn. And I think he's great. But he's also changed significantly. He's just become more like a Steel Inquisitor. He's talking about brethren now. And I kept thinking that this was a trap. So Marsh is leading him to something. He's leading him to the conventicle, to the conventicle, a ministry stronghold to the south, a place where the Inquisitors and high obligators of the Lord Ruler's religion had retreated after the collapse. And it's empty. So they're going there to kind of see what information they can gather. It feels like a trap, and it feels like, this is why I'm a little nervous of Marsh. It feels like Marsh might be setting the trap. Because he's like, we're going to go here. And then in the next section, he's like, we're going to go to this section. And then as soon as we're done, you're going back to Luthadel. That maybe puts my mind a little bit at ease. Because he's like planning for what's going to happen in like the future. But I don't know. There's something strange that's happening with Marsh right now. It's like he's slowly becoming a Steel Inquisitor. Like his mind is slowly escaping him almost. Maybe it's something that the spikes that go through his brain. I don't know. But the end note in this I just said was, what the heck is going on? Because it says, come with me to the conventicle. We must search it while we have the opportunity. Says he had hesitated, then nodded. Let me go explain to the villagers so we can leave tonight, I think. Marsh nodded, but he didn't move as Sazid retreated to the village. He remained standing in the darkness, letting the mist gather around him. Now, that's why I think this maybe isn't Marsh, and it's just like the mist doing something. This is almost like whatever is invisible. I feel like the mist is taking forms of people. Like, is the mist just taking the form of the Watcher? It was the same thing. Vin, when she was on top of that one building, looked out and saw like the mist taking the shape of someone. I don't think the mist is the Watcher, but is the mist acting as Marsh? Because the mist is like enveloping him at this moment. So it just makes me really curious who is real and who's not in this story. And especially toward the end, like there's this section that there's a Kandra in this, and I don't know who's real and who's not. This book is making me doubt reality. It's so good. It's so fun. I'm really enjoying this read. I'm really enjoying this. I really enjoyed this section so far. I'm pretty excited to get to the next one. Chapter 8. Vin meets the Watcher, dun, 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 and she finds out what the 14th metal does, which is great. Another really cool point. Loved in this chapter that Orsur is actually able to keep up with her. Really, really fun, really cool. Okay, so in this section, it says, Vin landed on the fountain's edge. Chill water sprang across her. She growled and jumped after the Watcher. There's like something fuzzy on my nose that I can't get off. It just keeps tickling me. It's annoying. So if I look like I'm picking my nose, I'm just trying to pick something on my nose. I feel like there's a hair, like a mustache hair or something like that. Sorry, that was gross. As he landed, he spun and whipped out his own daggers. She rolled beneath his first attack, then brought her daggers up into two-handed double jab. The Watcher jumped quickly out of the way, his daggers sparking and dropping beads of fountain water. He had a lithe power about him as he came to rest in a crouch. His body looked tense and secure and sure, capable. Vin smiled again, breathing quickly. She hadn't felt like this since those nights so long ago when she sparred with Kelsier. She remained in where did I just lost my position. She remained in a crouch, waiting, watching the mist curl between her and her opponent. He was of medium height with a wiry build, and he wore no mist cloak. For a half second there, I was like, is this Spook? But I don't think it's Spook. I think it's someone else that we just don't know about yet. My guess is just it's just someone we really have not been introduced to yet. Like it's just a totally new character, which I think is great. I'm excited to meet whoever this is. Um, there's another because they have like another little bit of conversation here, and I'll talk about this in a bit. But this is actually let me talk about this now, and then I'll skip back to what the 14th medal does. Perhaps she could make an ally out of him, bringing a second Mistborn to the defense of the central dominance. Even if she couldn't, she certainly couldn't afford to fight him. A spar in the night was one thing, but if their contests grew dangerous, adium might come into play. If that happened, she'd lose. The Watcher studied her with a careful eye. Answer something for me, he said in the mist. And he's always in the mist, right? Is he real? Vin nodded. Did you really kill him? Yes, Vin whispered. There was only one person he could mean. He nodded slowly. Why do you play their games? Whose games? The Watcher gestured into the mist, toward Keep Venture. Those aren't games, Vin said. It's no game when the people I love are in danger. The Watcher stood quietly, then shook his head as if disappointed. Then he pulled something from his sash. Vin jumped back immediately. The Watcher simply flipped a coin to the ground between them, and it bounced a couple of times, coming to rest on the cobbles. Then he pushed himself backward into the air. Vin didn't follow. She reached up, rubbing her head. She still felt like she should have a headache. She still felt like she should have a headache. Ooh, lots of S's in that. She still felt like she should have a headache. She shells. Who is this? Don't know. I think it's just a random person. I think this person's real. I think this is, again, I think this might be like, Vin's new teacher. Because this person seems to know more about allomantic powers than she does. Maybe not with the 14th medal, but he seems to be manipulating the mists in a way that Vin doesn't quite know about yet. And again, I don't know what the mists really are, or what they're doing. It seems like maybe the mist is the deepness. I want to know what the deepness is. I don't know if we're going to get there, even in this book. I feel like that's not until the very end. But she does find out what this 14th medal does. And then, so she burns it, and then it says, and then nothing. Oh, hold on. I'm going to skip this. So thinking yourself clever, Vin burned the 14th medal. A massive explosion sounded in her ears. Vin gasped, dropping to her knees in shock. Everything grew brighter around her as if some crack of energy had illuminated the entire street, and she felt cold, frigidly, stunningly cold. She moaned, trying to make sense of the sound. It wasn't one explosion, but many explosions, a rhythmic thudding like a drum pounding beside her. Her heartbeat, and then the breeze, loud as howling wind. The scratching of a dog searching for food, someone snoring in their sleep as if her hearing had been magnified 100 times, and then nothing. Vin fell backward against the cobblestones, and the sudden rush of light, coldness, and sound evaporating. A form moved in the shadows nearby, but she couldn't make it out. She couldn't see in the darkness anymore. Her tin was gone, she realized, coming to. My entire store of tin has been burned away. I was burning it when I turned on the Duralumin. I burned them both at once. That's the secret. The Duralumin had burned away all her tin in a single massive burst. It had made her senses amazingly acute for a very short time, but it had stolen away her entire reserve. And looking, she could see that her bronze and her pewter, the other metals she had been burning at the same time, were gone as well. The onrush of sensory information had been so vast that she hadn't noticed the effects of the other two. Really interesting. That just seems really self-explanatory to me. I'm really happy that we actually know what that is really quick. I'm like kind of pumped about that because I feel like that's going to be huge in the rest of the series. Like if she knows what this thing does and like what it is, that's going to give her a huge edge. Not that this is a better edge than adium, but I almost think it could be a better edge than adium. Like if you pewter burned for like an instant and you're just like, the Incredible Hulk and just smash, you could probably smash a building apart. If she had this, like, it makes me think, like the Lord Ruler, he's a, terroristman, so he can't really do this. But if she had this, did the Lord Ruler know about this? And if she knew about this with the Lord Ruler, I think she could have probably beaten him in like 3 minutes. I think she probably could have beaten all the Steel Inquisitors really quick too. It just depends on if other people know about this. I think the Steel Inquisitors probably know about this because they probably know. They have to know about this because they gave her aluminum and it drained her of her power, or drained her of her metals. So, did they not know what the other group of alloy was, or like the other pair was, or the other partner alloy was? They had to have known. And if they know, then why aren't they using it? Maybe it's more dangerous than she knows. I don't know, actually. They have to know. I'm like almost convinced that they would know of this, unless they were doing research themselves and trying to figure it out. But if they knew of this other metal, maybe they thought that it was paired with the adium or the gold or something. I don't know. That's kind of a fascinating question. I got to think about that one more. Okay, chapter 9. Sazid and Marsh kind of chat. Sazid decides to go back to Luthadel. That's pretty much all that happened in this chapter. Again, there's another section at the very end that I kind of just, make mention of again. So he closed his mouth and trudged after Marsh. He would return to Luthadel, proving himself a rebel once again. Perhaps in the end, he would realize that there was no ghostly threat facing the world, that he'd simply returned because of his own selfish desire to be with his friends. In fact, he hoped that proved to be the truth. The alternative made him very uncomfortable. And that just seems like it's like this. The alternative is the reality. There is something darker out there. I think we all kind of felt this, even during the initial Mistborn book. Like there's something that's greater than the Lord Ruler out there, not seeking to destroy, but like there's something greater out there that we don't really know or understand yet, and that is gonna prove I don't know, not like a more disastrous force, because it almost feels like the Force in Star Wars. It feels like this thing might be like, it could be used for good or evil. It just feels like almost something that people can draw on. And is it the mist? Is it something else? I don't know. Like the mist has to be involved in it somehow. But I just don't know how it is yet. Good questions. Good questions. Chapter 10. Got 2 more chapters left. So stick with me here. Chapter 10. This was the chapter that I didn't like until the end. The assembly meeting. It's all politics. And a terrace woman and another army arrives. Interesting who this terrace woman is. Another part, it says, Alendi's height struck me the first time I saw him. Here was a man who towered over the others, a man who, despite his youth and humble clothing, demanded respect. Who's Alendi? And who's writing these inscriptions? I want to know. I want to know. Can you show me? Sorry, Tarzan. Okay, again, this chapter is all politics. I didn't have that many notes on it. I just think it's interesting, the whole dynamic of things. I think Sanderson's writing is actually really realistic in this sense. And like, there's a lot of back and forth. Ellen makes a speech here, and things don't really go according to his plan. And there's people all in politics just vying for what they want, and they're they're all out there just trying to help themselves. Like these merchants are really out there trying to make it so that they can continue to do what they do and continue to trade and sell things that they want to do. And it doesn't matter if Ellen's a ruler or if Lord Straff is the ruler or if this other dude that comes in is the ruler. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that they're kind of just out looking for their own good, which I love Ellen for doing this. Like Ellen is good for setting up some kind of democracy, or some kind of represented government. That's at least what it is. It's not really necessarily a democracy. It's like a represented government. But at the same time, like you're in the same position as Vin. You're like, Ellen is a good dude. Things would have moved quicker and things might have been better for like, if he puts a timeline on this, say like for a year, he has ultimate power and can do what he wants, and that he sets up this government structure after. It is a fascinating question, ethically, for what you do when someone is usurped, when power is usurped from someone. where there is kind of like a coup or whatever it might happen, how the government steps in and changes this in a healthy way. I don't know if that's actually possible, to be honest. It always seems like there's too much civil unrest to actually make that possible. For a long time, one of my favorite books of all time is the Poisonwood Bible, and in that it's kind of like a commentary on a lot of different things, but one of the things it's a commentary on is the governmental structures of the Belgian Congo, where it transitions from the Belgian Congo to the French Congo to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then it goes from Zaire, and now it's back to the Democratic Republic of Congo, I think it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, yeah. And all the changes that country had, and it's like a commentary on how government structure works in that. And now the novel is nothing like that. It's really about this family that goes out into the middle of the tribe out there, and it's just like, there's side commentary on what's happening in Congo. But it made me like fixate on the Congo for years and like really study that and see what was going on there. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't know if there's a good way to like, now obviously the best way is just to not like, just to stay in your own lane, not to be a gold and oil and rubber hungry person like King Leopold was. And he wanted slaves, and he was a reprehensible person. But he went there seeking those things, and he took control of this. This was the one that was the Belgian Congo, took control of this and like stripped it of its resources and just like was dominant over it. When the rest of the world saw this as evil, he was like, oh, okay, sorry. And then relinquished his control over to the people of the Congo. But it's like one group leaves, and that's what they did. They just got up and left. And so what is this government supposed to do? In Mistborn, it feels like that. The Lord Ruler, as evil as he was, gave some kind of stability to the people. They knew what to expect. They knew what the government structure was. If you just get up and usurp that, you kill the Lord Ruler. There needs to be a better plan in place. Now, Ellen is trying to set that plan up, but it's not working all that well because people are still operating under the Lord Ruler's mode of operation. Like, they still think that that's maybe the better way to do things. So I think it really becomes confusing. And I think this book is asking a really interesting ethical question for what do you do in a government structure when you are dealing with something totally new. I don't think that's ever handled that well. I don't know if I've ever known a time in human history where that was handled exceptionally well. I think, I don't know if there's ever been a time. There's always some atrocity that's attached to that. There's always something that's reprehensible that's attached to that. There's always some kind of war that's attached to that. Honestly, the best example, I'm not just saying this because I'm like, an American citizen, is actually the country of America. I think they're maybe the best one. But that was like a little different maybe. Yeah, that was a little too different because it was like, nation of immigrants, and then it was just like one immigrant population kind of one. And they just decided to implement their rules. So I don't know. But I think it's a fascinating question that he's asking in this section. And I think Sanderson's doing a great job of like skirting the line between not going super deep into these political structures, but still asking these questions in a really interesting way that make you think about like how Ellen should have behaved in this situation. And should Ellen have taken sole control of this on his own for a short period of time? Now, I don't think so. I think he's right to do what he's doing. But again, he's right to do it, but it's idealistics versus pragmatics. Like, it's not, the system isn't working. They're not getting what really should be the right thing that happens, which is the Ska are kind of free and like, there's equality in the realm. That's not happening. And there is a terrorist woman out here that Vin is very suspicious of. Do not know who this is. Will Sazid and this woman shack up together? Now, he's a eunuch, but you never know. Maybe there's a bead that gives him the ability to have a certain body part. Just kidding. Maybe that's too lewd. The end of this chapter is great. I thought this was like let me just read this because it was so good. Okay, so at the back of the room, people had begun whispering and shuffling, and some were already moving quickly out of the chamber as several soldiers are coming in. Ellen felt Vin stiffen in anxiety, and fear stabbed him. We're too late. The army has attacked. One of the soldiers finally reached the stage, and Ellen rushed over. What? He asked. Has Straff begun the assault? The soldier frowned, looking concerned. No, no, my lord. Ellen sighed slightly. What then? My lord, it's a second army. It's just arrived outside the city. Now, I thought that was like a great way. I'm like, oh, that's going to be the end of the part. I turned into chapter 11. I'm like, what else is it going to do in this section? That would have been a great end to the first part where there's another army outside. And then all of a sudden you get Breeze coming in. I kind of think that still would have been a great ending. But chapter 11 is so fascinating too because finally Breeze is back. I'm pumped that Breeze back. So chapter 11, Breeze just comes back and they kind of learn that someone could potentially be infiltrating the group. Now, again, this is what we have here. Breeze comes back, bringing this whole big army with him, and this was why this happened. It's basic negotiating strategy, my good man, Breeze explained as a pack man handed him his dueling cane, taken off the horse. Breeze used it to gesture westward, toward Lord Set's army. It's Lord Set. I'm guessing that's just Lord Set's. When there are two participants in a negotiation, one is generally stronger than the other. That makes things very difficult for the weaker party, which in this case would have been us. Yes, Ellen said, but with 3 armies, we're still the weakest. Ah, Breeze said, holding up the cane. But those other 2 parties are fairly even in strength. Straff is likely stronger, but Set has very large forces. If either of those warlords risk attacking Luthadel, the army will suffer losses enough that he won't be able to defend against the 3rd army. To attack us is to expose oneself. It is a brilliant plan. I love Breeze. Breeze might be my favorite of the entire group. I love Ham. I think Ham's kind of fun. He's a little too philosophical for me. Dachshund I'm a little suspicious of. Clubs is a grump. I kind of love Clubs to some extent. He's kind of fun. I think Breeze is like just such a... He's just like a... He knows human psychology. He knows... I just think he has the edge over like everyone else here because he just knows what people are going to do, and he knows the inner workings of the human mind. And so I think he knows like war strategy like this so well. Like Clubs is good. He's like the captain or the general of this this army right now, and he's doing a great job. The people are responding to him really well. But Breeze is like the strategist. Breeze is the one that they should probably be listening to because I think he knows more about what humans would do in different situations than anybody else because he manipulates people's emotions. I think it's really fascinating, and I think this is a brilliant strategy, and I'm really happy he's back in the story. But I'm also suspicious that he's a Kandra. I didn't mention him in the prior, but I'm like, there's a section in The Mandalorian where they do something similar to this. Or no, I think this is the Book of Boba Fett. No, The Mandalorian. This is the end of Mandalorian season 2 when they're like faking a chase into this one Imperial cruiser and they just land into the Imperial cruiser. This is what this felt like to me. I'm like, are they faking a chase? Is this really Breeze? It seems like it's really Breeze. You can't really fake Breeze's suaveness and like calm, cool, and collectedness. So I'm pretty convinced that this is Breeze, but I don't know. I said this might come back. So it says... it's all right, Captain, Ellen said to the younger soldier. Captain DeMoe, second in command of the palace guard. Despite the fact that Ham shunned uniforms, this man clearly took great pride in keeping his own uniform very neat and smart. You did well by keeping this quiet, Ellen said. We knew about these bones already. They aren't a reason for concern. So this is when the captain comes in talking about the first pair of bones, which is the pair of bones that Orsur gave up to become the dog. So now this Captain DeMoe, knows he's second in command of the palace guard. He knows about this. Will he spoil this in some way? It makes me think that our very old Orsur might get decapitated. And if he does, will he live? I don't know. It's interesting. And then the end of this. Great section. Vin looked down at the pile of bones, feeling a sickening sense because they found another pile of bones stuffed in a closet. There was a very good chance that someone in their core team, a member of Kelsier's former band, was now an imposter. I think it's Doxson. It's my best guess of who it is. I don't think it's Ham. I don't know if it's really someone in the core crew too. I feel like that might be like a misdirect, and it might be someone else that's not in the core crew. And I don't know. It's a great ending to this chapter. It really makes me want to keep reading the next section, which I'm gonna go do. I'll probably keep reading this like maybe a chapter a night or something like that. It's really fun. This is a great book so far. I don't know who this person is impersonating. It has to be someone near. I don't think it's Orsur. I don't think you can I don't think that's the case. Maybe Breeze. Part of me thinks Spook to some extent. Maybe that's why his language has changed. Like he's actually able to speak clearly, but Spook has like a personality like it's hard to replicate. It could be Clubs. Clubs' personality would be easy to replicate because he's just a grump, and I feel like Kandra could do that pretty easily. You just kind of be grumpy. Ham, potentially. I would be bummed if it was Ham because I really like Ham. Ham's one of my favorites. Doxson just always seems a little grumpy. I think it could potentially be Dox. I don't know. That one's got a big ellipsis by it. I just don't know yet. Like I just finished that, so I haven't been able to think about that much. So I don't know. But this is a great book. I'm really pumped. I'm really excited to keep reading this. This has really been fun. I am probably going to do like all of part 2 next. I'll probably just read the entirety of part 2. How many pages is this? Ooh, we got a while. Chapter 22. Maybe I'll split this up. Hold on. Is this really this long? I definitely missed something. Well, let me just go to the table of contents like a normal person. Ooh, wow. Part 2 is a long section. Definitely going to split that up into 2 parts. It's more than 150 pages. Yeah, I'll definitely split that into 2 parts. Maybe every part from now I just get split into 2 parts. Like a halfway discussion of what I think of those, and then the end discussion of what I think of those. But let me know. Let me know what you think I should do in the comments. Let me know what you think of these chapters or any of my guesses. Don't give me any spoilers, please. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.